second habit or second thing you can do. Keep your attention firmly planted on the new path you're building and away from the old ones, or you are inclined to drift backwards to them. In other words, you can't be, let me just go drastic here. You can't be a drug addict passing the dope house every day. Well, Brian, I got to pass the dope house on my way to work. You better find another route, another path. See, Brian, you don't understand, man. I got to catch the bus and I'm in recovery, but I got to pass the dope house. No, because if you pass the dope house on a bad day, you're going to go inside the dope house and you ain't going to make it to work. Guys, I use that bad, drastic example to make a point. When you get a new habit, you got to stay on that path and stay firmly planted on that path, or it's real easy to go back to what you're comfortable with and what you're used to. Now, let me show you why. The reason why is number 3. You must travel your newly made path as often as possible and do so without luck or chance. Now, 2 and 3 are combined. This is important. You have to travel your newly made path as often as possible and do so without luck or chance. In other words, I'll give you guys an example because I started my speaking career, my training career in network marketing, 18 years full time. Here's what I had to do. I had to make sure when I was networking that I stayed on as many conference calls as possible. If not, then I'm gonna know every Kevin Durant score, every, back then it was Michael Jordan score. I'll be just like the guy in the barbershop. So I stayed on as many conference calls as possible. I plugged into as many home meetings as possible. I went to as many regional conventions and national conventions as possible. Then after a while, my new environment became conference calls, national conventions, in-home meetings, and regionals with multimillionaires. And then I became one. So now the barbershop talk to me is now funny. You see the difference? I had to flip and make sure that I went down my new path without luck or chance. I made it a point to stay around my business partners, to hang around my mentors. So now when I got my hair cut in the barbershop and I heard the conversations, I used to be right there with them. Oh man, you crazy. Michael Jordan, the best thing since sliced bread. How many assists does so-and-so have? Larry Bird and Magic don't compare, blah, blah. Now, after a while, I go in the barbershop and I just listen. Man, y'all funny. Y'all really, really, really into this stuff, huh? Y'all really into discussing millionaires and contracts. Look, again, nothing wrong with it, but all day, all night. Now, I became the odd man out at the barbershop. That's why I started cutting my own hair. No, seriously. When I decided to hang around my new path more than my old path, you're going to have a decision to make. Right then. Get comfortable with the new you and then uncomfortable with the old you, or decide to go back to comfort but be okay with that decision. See, life is really about decisions. Some of them are simple, some of them are difficult, but you got to be comfortable with the decision that you make. And I made a decision to travel my new path without luck or chance. That's number 3. That's the third way you got to create new habits. Now, last one. First thing you got to do is rid yourself of old habits by replacing it with a new one. That's the first thing. The second thing you got to do is keep your attention firmly planted on the new path you're building and away from the old habits, or you're going to go back towards them. How do you keep your attention firmly planted on the new path? Number 3, recapping, is to travel that newly made path as often as possible and create ways for doing so without luck or chance. And then number 4 is resist the temptation. Oh, this is very important. Number 4 is resist the temptation to travel over easier paths because you're used to the past. See, in other words, every time you yield to the temptation of going down that easier path, it's harder for you to get on your new path. Every time you yield to the temptation to travel down your easy path, it's harder to go back to the new path. But here's the good thing about it. Here's the antithesis. The more or the harder it is for you to get on your new path, and the more often you frequent that difficulty, the easier it becomes to stay away from your old path. See, I have a lot of you guys have listened to my P.A.Y.S rewinds. If you haven't, these are audios. We call it Motivation in Motion. And I have a rewind that says half of you does not exist. All right. You guys can go to, after the webinar, go to paysrewind.com. Write that down if you haven't already. paysrewind.com. There's a track I have called Half of You Does Not Exist. And it talks about polarity. There's no north without south. There's no up without down. There's no salt without pepper. There's no black without white. The universe is built on what's called polarity. Well, what's true for this statement, every time you yield to temptation, it's easier for you to go back. That means the opposite has to be true. Every time you resist temptation, it's easier for you to move forward. How cool is that? Every time you yield to temptation, it's easier for you to go back to your old self. But every time you resist temptation, it's easier for you to move forward. So write this down as a very important quote. Even pain lets you know that you're still alive. Pain is a good thing. When you're doing push-ups and you're doing sit-ups, if your abs aren't hurting and your biceps, your triceps, your traps, your chest is not hurting, the push-ups aren't working and the sit-ups aren't working. Pain lets you know you're still alive. When you start feeling the pain and it starts to burn, now we starting to kick. That's not where you give up. The pain lets you know that it's working. So it's painful to create new habits. That's why you have to do it, because the pain lets you know that it's worth it. The pain and overcoming that pain and that threshold and saying, you know what, I'm going to go vertical this year. I'm tired of being horizontal. I'm tired of being everybody on everybody's same playing field. I'm going to go vertical individually. My organization and my peers are going to go vertical. Those that want to come with me. My corporation is going to go vertical. See, I decided this year I'm going to take P.A.Y.S vertical. I'm going to teach people, activity, and yourself. I'm going to show people how to increase productivity, production, and profits. That's what I do. I'm going vertical this year. And once you go vertical, horizontal no longer exists.